CKNW News Talk 980, BC's news leader.
I'm going to get personal when we come back. We're going to break for the news headlines. We're going to come back and find. You mentioned mentoring. I want to find out if you had a mentor, what you do to unwind, maybe what kind of books or movies you appreciate. Talking with Tamara Vrooman, CEO of Vancity. You're with Bill Good on the Chorus Radio Network. Talking with Tamara Vrooman, CEO of Vancity, and the first of several profiles we're going to do on chief executives. I think you're going to like this email. I'd like to thank Ms. Vrooman for continuing to promote Vancity's community links. I send dozens of high school students on work experience to Vancity branches throughout Burnaby and Vancouver. Vancity is one of the only financial institutions willing to allow students to work in branches, and they play a vital role in providing career experiences to students. That's just from Keith Montgomery, Burnaby North Secondary School.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. Thanks very much to Keith. You know, we certainly love having the students in our branches. Our staff love it. Our members love it. It keeps us up to date on all the latest trends, but also allows us to contribute to their education and hopefully to connect them to our way of doing business.
Keeps you close to the community.
It absolutely does, which is essential. You know, if we're going to be able to innovate, if we're going to be able to lead, if we're going to be able to support, we need to be connected. And so our 59 branches, our branch managers aren't the kind that are sitting in their office. They're out in the community. They're working with not-for-profits. They're working with schools. They're working with faith organizations, and they're very much a part of the community. They often grew up in the communities where they're the branch managers, and they bring that community philosophy into the business every day.
Are you optimistic about the next 2 or 3 years? We touched on it before the break, but this is a time you and I sat on a forum yesterday that talked about trust, about confidence. Canadians are more confident, apparently, than most people around the world these days. Are you?
I am confident. I am optimistic. I think I'm naturally that way, but I also think we can't be complacent. As I said earlier, we really have to think a little bit longer term than the next couple of years. I think we likely will fare, relatively speaking, fairly well, but there's some significant issues that still have not been resolved in Europe, in the U.S. We see China's growth slowing from its huge double-digit pace to maybe something more moderate in the 8 or 9%, but it's all relative. That's going to feel like downward pressure from their point of view. And so how resilient are we to that? What are we thinking about? Where are we making our investments? How are we really planning for the future rather than just worrying about getting through the next few years? That's what I worry about.
You have an 8-year-old.
I do.
What do you see in his future? And what would you... how would you guide him in terms of looking to future jobs and prospects?
Mm-hmm. I think that what's great in terms of the future for our kids is the opportunity to be mobile, to get information, to participate with different cultures is certainly far greater than it was when I was a child. And what I see for him is we're encouraging him already to learn a second and third language. Unfortunately, we only speak one at home, so I think that's very important.
What languages are you encouraging him to speak?
Mandarin and French. So he certainly has taken to that and is always challenging us to do the same. And so I do think that he'll have opportunity that is, I hopefully, integrated from an international point of view and a cultural point of view, but I hope he can bring those insights to really be resident here in Vancouver.
Will you want him to go to university?
I absolutely will want him to do what he wants to do. I don't think that university is the only way forward. Certainly we know that there's a number of people in trades and technical schools that do very well. I think creativity and design is going to be more a part of the future than technical expertise and operations. So we're encouraging him to pursue arts and performance-based things, not necessarily as a career, but as a way of thinking and as a way of engaging.
Would you be okay with the trades?
I'd be okay with the trades. It'd be useful to have somebody with the trades in our family for sure. So, because I certainly have no talent in that regard. But yeah, I think that the most important thing is that whatever you choose to do, choose it with some passion and be the best at it. That I think is the most important thing.
Final segment after this. Final few minutes with Tamara Vrooman in our series on profiling CEOs. What are you going to do on the weekend?
This weekend, I hope if the weather's good, we're going to head up to Cyprus, which we do most Sundays. I've taken up snowshoeing recently.
Snowshoeing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really catching on. Me and half of Vancouver, it seems. But it's a great way to be out on the mountains. I go with my parents and my husband as well as my son. So, we get all the ages and it's something we can do together. And you're out in the trees, in the snow, and it's absolutely beautiful. Half an hour door to door.
And great exercise.
Absolutely, particularly the uphill part.
Yeah. Books. What do you read?
I read a variety of things. I don't read books that often. I read The Economist religiously. I would say really to get that worldwide view. I read a lot of children's books with my son, but I do tend to read magazines and online more than I read novels and books. The last book that I read was when we were in Eastern Europe last year on a vacation on the rise and fall of communism, actually, which was very, very interesting and relevant. You really see. You can study those things in school, but you really see the effect of a totally different regime on the culture and the people there.
Well, especially when you're traveling in some place like Eastern Europe.
Absolutely.
Where were you?
We went everywhere from starting in the Czech Republic through Hungary, in through parts of Austria, and then down to Slovenia and Croatia and Bosnia. And certainly in Croatia in particular.
Were you on a river cruise?
No.
Because that sounds exactly like a river cruise I took a few years ago.
Yeah, no, we were on Eastern European trains, which aren't quite the same as Western European trains.
No.
So they're the slow route for sure, but we saw all sorts of communities that we wouldn't have seen otherwise.
What about movies? Do you have time to go to a movie?
We go to movies sometimes, but, as with many, now that they come directly through your TV, we watch a lot at home. Last movie I saw was Moneyball, and not just because Brad Pitt was in it, but I thought it was a great story of innovation, hey?
Yeah.
And about how, and a business story ultimately. How you
the last movie my wife and I went to.
Yeah, it's a very good film.
Yeah.
Very good film. Yeah.
But it's interesting that what you took from it, the innovation.
Absolutely, about taking a business model that everybody thought was perfect and could never, ever, ever be changed and saying, well, actually it can be changed and we can do something with it. And a team that has a payroll of 40 million can outperform a team with a payroll of 140 million. And that's essentially the story. And now it's totally transformed, as I understand it, the way that baseball is scouted, planned, and ultimately delivered on the field.
If you could have dinner, I feel like I'm doing Vanity Fair here, but if you could have dinner with any 4 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Any 4 people, living or dead, I would have to say for sure Julia Child, because who would want to not want to have a dinner that she prepared for you? So certainly, and I love to cook, so that would be one. I also think Dr. Seuss would be on the list. I think he's a very interesting person, not only for his children's books, but for his philosophy and the way he introduced children to his ideas. I certainly would be joined by probably my husband. I think I'd invite him to that dinner, and then also my dear friend Virginia Green, who recently passed away from ovarian cancer, but was always a lively dinner companion. And if I could have her back, even for one dinner, I certainly would want that.
What was it about her that you particularly admired?
I worked with her in government, and she had come from the outside after running politically. And so, in that culture, those two things often don't mesh well, going from being an elected official to a public servant. But she brought a creativity and an energy and a sort of an entrepreneurial spirit and a profound and deep understanding and respect for the city and the province that I really admired and really learned from. And plus, she was just a heck of a lot of fun to be around.
She was.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you a question that's kind of off the wall, and I just thought of it now because it came from a call that I didn't get to this morning, but we were talking about the robocall issue in Ottawa. We were talking about WikiLeaks, and I was taking calls on what this says about politics, and I had a call that we just didn't have time to get to, but the gist of it was all politicians are corrupt. And you've worked in politics, not on the political side, but with politicians, and I wonder how you react to that.
I guess I'm deeply disappointed by that, not because I don't understand why that perception is held, but I can tell you, in my experience, it simply is untrue. The number of people who decide to go into politics because they truly believe that's the best way they can make a contribution to creating a better community, a better province, a better country, they're by far in the majority. And when you see what those folks have to do, what it does to their business lives, what it does to their personal lives, what it does to their health sometimes, like who has seen a politician get skinnier when they're in office? They almost always look older, gain more weight because of the stress and the pressures that it puts onto them. So I think most people do it for the right reasons. They may not all be successful, but I can't say I've encountered one corrupt politician in my days.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I share that view, sitting across the table for about 30 years from politicians from all parties.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they got into it for the right reasons, and they stay with it for the right reasons. The system sometimes makes them do things or influences them in ways that they probably don't like or enjoy. But for the most part, they're perfectly good people. They're basically your neighbors and mine.
Absolutely. And I think that, are all of them successful or good at it? Obviously not. But I think that if we want to encourage more people, and particularly young people, to go into public life, we need to be reflective on how we treat people who are in public office and the amount of respect and the amount of credibility we give to that office. Because I do worry, like, who's going to run in the future?
Would you ever?
If we say that it's corrupt. I certainly get asked that question often, and I think you never say never, but certainly I've seen that up close, and I think I'm better suited to the role that I have. I
do want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the 2012 Globe Sustainability Conference that's coming up here in Vancouver.
Yeah, the Global Alliance for Banking on Values will be holding its annual meeting here in Vancouver next week, and Vancity has been really honored and privileged to be the first Canadian financial institution invited to join that network. And what it is a network of 14 of the world's most sustainable banks, including the bank that was named by the Financial Times as the most sustainable bank in the world. They're from Europe, they're from Bangladesh, they're from Peru, they're from the United States. And what they're proving is that by putting the needs of people first, by putting sustainable loans out, by funding alternative energy products, by funding schools, and by really putting the needs of their communities first, the profitability follows. And so they're very, very successful financial institutions. They have among the best financial performance of any financial institutions in the world, but they do it differently. And that's what we try and do at Vancity as well. So we think it gives us a great opportunity to show Vancouver and the world that what we're doing here and the way that we do business that so resonates, we think, with our community is not just a local one-off. It actually has international resonance and particularly now relevance.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much, Bill. My pleasure.